viewers, and welcome to the talk show by Fidelis Leadership Institute. And happy Women's Day, happy Women's Month. My name is Brenda Akia, Uganda's member to the committee, the CEDAW committee, which is the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It is based on the CEDAW Convention that aims to eradicate all forms of discrimination against women. We hold member states, who are 189 member states, Uganda is a signatory. We hold them accountable to ensure that they're able to promote women's rights, to take all measures and actions to ensure that we promote gender equality, women empowerment, and end all forms of discrimination against women. So today, in our discussion, we are very privileged to have a panel discussion of very, very, very knowledgeable and excellent experts who work in government, that's different sectors of the government, but also in civil society, and they play a very critical role in ensuring that women and girls in Uganda are able to enjoy all their rights, they're able to be free from violence, and they're able to enjoy and be economically empowered. Thank you so much. We're going to also be live. We are live on X under the Fidelis Leadership Institute handle on X, and then also you're tuning in live. In line with this discussion for today, we do have the session on women on International Women's Day. We all know International Women's Day is meant to celebrate women, to celebrate the achievements that government, civil society, private sector have all made to advance women's rights and achieve gender equality. And it's a day for us to reflect and say what challenges do we continue to face and what are the opportunities going forward to ensure that we invest in women and accelerate progress, not only progress, but sustainable progress. We know in Uganda the government has strongly taken efforts to address all the different issues women face, but we still have so many challenges. The police reports, the annual crime report came out recently, and we know that women and girls continue to be the biggest victims of different forms of violence, rape, defilement. In many of our societies, if we go to rural areas, we continue to find that many women and girls are denied the right to inherit. Government statistics do show that women and girls still face challenges in going to school, and they lack access to education, they lack access to economic empowerment. Even the participation in the labor force is still very low for women compared to men. I believe the statistics have been put to 61% of women and 70% for men. So you see very many women are being left behind. So in this discussion today, we're going to focus on what efforts, we're going to discuss a number of questions on what efforts government has done, but also how can we utilize the existing opportunities, turn the challenges into opportunities to advance women and girls in Uganda. So I'd like to welcome our panelists. Uganda Police Force joining us, but I'd like to welcome who I admire greatly because she works in the Ministry of Justice and is very passionate about advancing access to justice for women and girls in Uganda. That's a person for us to have on this show. She's called Miss Lucy Ladira. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, viewers, and happy Women's Day. My name is Lucy Ladera, as Brenda has kindly introduced me. I work with the Ministry of Justice, the Justice Law and Order Secretariat, and my portfolio is the Advisor for Criminal Justice. As the Advisor for Criminal Justice, I have been privileged to work a lot in the area of gender justice, and that's partly why I'm here in the studio. And so this Women's Day, the theme from the Ministry of Gender is Count Her In, Accelerating Gender Equality Through Economic Empowerment. And I think it's really befitting. It falls in line with the bigger United Nations agenda for the same, which is accelerating the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls by addressing poverty and strengthening institutions and financing with a gender perspective. And so for me, as a justice practitioner, I at the UN Women says that there are 5 areas for economic empowerment. 2 of those fall squarely under what the justice sector does. One is human rights. And they say that at the core of women's empowerment, unjust and patriarchal economic systems perpetuate gender inequality, and discriminatory social norms stand in the way of women's access to justice. Now, UN Women also says that globally, on average, women have only 64% of the rights that men enjoy. Where is the 36%? And that's where we come in as a justice sector. The second area that UN Women positions for economic empowerment is, I said, it's human rights, and the second one is security. And that is what the justice sector does. That the security of the human being and the security of property. And we know that without that security, the woman is not able to thrive, that your businesses are not safe, and that when the disputes arise, they are not handled. And so even the environment for investment is made insecure. And so that again pulls the woman back. So those are the 2 key areas where we come in as a justice sector and as the government to ensure that a woman, the Ugandan woman, is economically empowered.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And as Lucy has spoken, we really do want to acknowledge the efforts of the government, the Ministry of Justice, your Honorable Minister, your different stakeholders, the departments, the Ministry of Justice, and the different justice and law order and other sector actors. You guys are doing a tremendous job, and we really do acknowledge that. And also, of course, we do acknowledge the Ministry of Gender, Honorable Betty Amongi, Honorable Peace Mutuzo, of course, Commissioner Nakafero, and Assistant Commissioner Chomkamba, who really put in a lot of effort to address, and of course with the leadership of President Museveni, who really empowers many women, and of course with the challenges we continue to see in Parliament, where there's still, I think our percentage of women in Parliament is about 31%. We still need to progress. Now let me introduce our second panelist, who is a colleague. I worked very closely with her. I think she's my supervisor. She's called Elizabeth Kemigisha. She's the advocacy manager at the Uganda Association of Women Lawyers, which is, everyone knows FIDA Uganda, and we all know what FIDA Uganda does. So Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Brenda, you want to tell live? Brenda is a colleague, a friend, but also yes, somebody that does inspire a lot of the work that I do. And like I've been introduced, my name is Elizabeth Kemigisha, and I work with FIDA Uganda. And I know that many times when someone mentions FIDA, someone's mind runs to access to justice. So if you need maintenance, if it's an issue of family, if it's an issue where someone needs maintenance, custody, children, then run to FIDA. I think rarely do we talk about the work that we do, rarely do people get to maybe speak about the work that we do on women economic empowerment, yet it's one of the key thematic areas in the institution where we do work with different communities to empower them to have voice, to have agency, to be able to participate in economic activity, just like the other male counterparts do participate in the economy. But also another piece of work that we do that is not usually maybe heard about in the different spaces is the work on access to justice outside family law. So speaking about transitional justice, women in conflict, speaking about labor rights, ensuring decent work for especially women and other marginalized groups in Uganda. If you're speaking about business and human rights, that's corporate accountability, ensuring that investment is done in such a manner that's equitable, that respects the sovereignty of a country, but also that respects the rights of those communities where the investment is happening. But also lastly, we also do work on empowering women to participate in public life and governance. So we do work with different government structures, with the different community empowerment groups that we see at parish, sub-county level, to ensure that women are actively participating in either leadership, in the different structures of the district or the government, and elective politics. And I remember last year, before the Women's Council elections were extended, we had so many strong women from Pade, from Lira, from Gulu, whom we had prepared and had filled their forms and were ready to run and vie for positions as women councillors. So that's broadly some of the work that we do in the institution. And I am glad to be here. I think one of the things that we must credit the government for is ensuring that there are collaborations with institutions like ourselves to do the work that we do in collaboration with them. Because I think that way we do not only foster accountability, but we also go ahead and manage the little finances that we have to reach as many people as possible. So thank you, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I think I love what you touched on. One thing I credit FIDA for is its partnership. It's accepting that it takes joint efforts. One, to hold the government accountable for what it is not doing to advance women's rights, but also two, you understand that you can't work alone. You work with the different ministries of the government to ensure that all access to justice is advanced in even rural areas, even among refugees, even among migrants, women with disabilities. And last year, I remember you did work with women with albinism.
Yes.
And I think that's really something I do acknowledge FIDA for, and I'm glad to be part of the association. So I think now that you've introduced, we've learned something about what the panelists do. I think I will start with a question that is very significant. I know professionally, you know what is important, why Women's Day is great. But now, for our viewers to relate with you in your personal capacity, of course, you can talk about personally, then, of course, link it up to the professional. But first, to relate with colleagues, to teach them more about that you're also human. You're not these professionals out there that, oh, I only fought the law, I push for justice. What does Women's Day, International Women's Day, mean for you? And what does it mean for us in line with this thing, investing in women to ensure economic empowerment, to accelerate sustainable and inclusive growth? Lucy.
Yeah, I think as a justice practitioner, somebody that used to be in the prosecution, and given the background that I have stated in terms of where the justice system comes in terms of human rights and security, for me, it really means me supporting functional justice. And functional justice is about having the structures in place. It's about having the human resources in place. It is about having the money to do the work that is supposed to be done in place. The other, this day also means for me that gender justice, women empowerment, for women to be able to not only access the justice spaces, but to be able to get an outcome within a certain frame of time. A study was done by CEDOVIP a few years ago, and it stated the cost of justice to the government at 77 billion shillings a year. Now, those costs come in different parameters. It is when a woman is violated and she cannot go to work. It's when a woman is violated and she has to incur medical costs. It is the cost to the government, to those hospitals that provide those services. It is the cost to the government in the work that that woman is not able to do, that then turns into a loss to the government. So for me, it is about ensuring that this woman accesses justice and accesses it on time. And time is different things to different people. The other area is supporting the justice workforce to ensure that there's gender responsiveness. We have police officers, we have the judiciary, we have the state attorneys. Are they gender responsive? When that woman comes to the police station, how is she received? When she has to give her evidence in court, how does she give that evidence? Is she in front of everybody? Is there a space for her to give this evidence? It's also ensuring that she is protected after she has given her evidence. It's about the children. And just to emphasize that for me, gender is it's not women. It's about people, it's about men, women, boys, and girls. And that should really be the running theme in all this. The other key area for me is that awareness creation. A lot of people do not know what to do when they come into the justice system. And that's why we have perceptions of corruption, because people believe that when they go to the police station, they have to pay a fee, which is not really the case. We have instances where people have offered money to our officers because they think the service is supposed to be paid for. Awareness is also important so that we know how to demand for services. It's about rights knowledge. If people do not know what their rights are, then they die in their pain. And that translates into all these things that I have spoken about. So for me, at a personal level, I'm passionate about ensuring that the system works, that there's information out there, and people are able to demand for their rights. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I think I'll begin from the personal. Even when they told us that the personal is political. Yes, on a personal level, for me, Women's Day is a reminder of women's liberation, of why it's important that women have voice, why it's important that women are not second-class citizens, but also a celebration of not just our resilience. I'm slowly drawing myself away from using the term resilience and women, because the literal meaning of the word, but also many times in the context when we use it, it's suffering. But, generally, a lot of people use it in line with, suffering. You say, I've had a long day. Women are resilient. It's even a job.
Yeah, I know.
Right? But, yeah, it's a celebration of our strength, our unique strength as women. It's a celebration of who we are. It's a celebration of the fights, right? I feel like for women to get to a position where we are right now, not just in Uganda, but globally, it's been a fight, of fighting patriarchy, of fighting capitalism and its diverse impact on especially women and other vulnerable groups. So for me, Women's Day is a reminder that women's rights are human rights, and that women's liberation is part of the greater liberation of not African countries, but also as communities, as individuals, in the different ways we organize. So for me, at a personal level, this is what Women's Day looks like for me. And I know maybe in closing, this also something that we don't always like to associate with, because I think because of the work that we do, you're thinking every day is a struggle. Every day we must be, fighting back something that is not working. But also Women's Day for me is a reminder to celebrate, really, to celebrate how far we have come as women. We can vote. I know there was a time women would not vote. In Saudi Arabia, women recently just began to drive, right? And all these things, while they may seem like they naturally come to a country, but with the way political regimes are moving, we cannot under credit the fact that we must also celebrate the successes that women are experiencing right now as individuals, as wives, as siblings, as ministers, and the different positions that they occupy. From a professional level, for me, Women's Day is a day to remind stakeholders for whatever role that we play, that women are here and women still need support. There's something, I don't know if we have noticed, there's a narrative these days. I like to call it the anti-gender narrative. There's a narrative to push back, these days, where people will say, you see, the bank manager of this huge bank is a woman. We have so many ministers. In fact, women, we need to step back. Let's first, I think we have arrived. And I think many times the questions that we have is, it's not about one individual woman. It's not about one community. It's not about the few women, for example, that have made it through university. Who are these women that we are talking about at the end of the day? Who is benefiting from, if we are talking about government programs, who is benefiting when we talk about OEP or the new program GROW, right? And we say that it reaches a diverse number of women. Who are these women? If we get into looking at the files and seeing, are we counting? Is it reaching the victims? Because the victims of domestic violence, as they said, they would reach. Is it reaching the women that live with disabilities? Is it reaching the women in northern Uganda, Acholi and Lango sub-county? Is it reaching those women? So for me, Women's Day is a reminder that accountability is almost the only thing that can help us reach that place where we both recognize what our roles are, what our responsibilities are. Lucy earlier spoke about the importance of rights knowledge, right? Many times we concentrate a lot on letting communities know what their rights are, forgetting that there are responsibilities under our different laws, under the different strategies that are supposed to enhance or strengthen our positioning in communities, in government, in leadership and governance. We forget that there are responsibilities to those. So for me, Women's Day is a stark reminder that we must not forget that we all have different roles we play, but accountability should be at the center of all that.
Thank you. Viewers, I hope that has related to you and your experiences. I hope that maybe in the comment section on Fidelis Leadership Institute Expert, you can be able, and also as you tune in, I think on Smart 24 TV's Twitter X page, you're able to comment and share with us, what does Women's Day mean to you? Why is this day important for you? And I really like what the both of you have said in terms of you acknowledge the steps that we have taken, but then also we continue to see gaps. Because we do have the programs that are maybe going to communities, and we have, the CEDAW committee, the CEDAW convention refers to that as, even Maputo, as disadvantaged groups of women. Like those are rural women, women with disabilities, migrants, refugees, and women who fall in that category. And amidst the progress we have cited, the awareness that communities and the programs that grow UWEP, if you look at the numbers, the government, I'm now relying on government numbers that they give us, the gender gaps continue to exist. Women continue to be left behind. More so, those women we are talking about fall under the category of disadvantaged groups of women, indigenous women, rural women. So much that we see even in communities among educated people who we should know, who we should understand, should know better, we still practice discriminatory norms, social norms in communities where we are saying that discriminate against women and say women and girls are not entitled, are inferior to men, they're not entitled to inherit property. I think you've heard in our communities, even in the villages, you will say, that is a girl, she can't go to school. This is a girl, girls cannot inherit. The government has done significant, even our constitution says women have a right to property. Even leadership, there's so many practical challenges that we are able to be at the table, a number of us, a number of women, you're able to be professionals, but there's so many challenges we face to enable us fully, and all other women fully really enjoy being part of the table, or even equally participate in decision making, be it in conflict resolution, like in post-conflict northern Uganda, or even among humanitarian situations like with refugees in different parts of Uganda. So amidst all those numbers that show that, even and just the annual report that the police, crime report that the police just released, you see how women and the girls are continuing to suffer significantly. So just to give us hope, Lucy and Elizabeth, and I can't wait for the police to come, because you talked about issues of corruption and access to justice. These are very big events. I hope our colleague can be able to answer. So amidst all that, what good practices in your work have you seen exist that honestly ensure that maybe women, that is helping the government to really try to get to the level of gender equality and see parity in different decision-making systems, but also to see that women are economically empowered? And then, and not only women just in central Uganda, but in, Uganda there's post-conflict, then there's the humanitarian situation, like the refugees and the migrants, internally displaced people, like those who get displaced because of climate change, crisis and disasters. So what good practices exist, and how can we ensure that after the Women's Day celebrations tomorrow, which is 8 March, International Women's Day in Qatar, we are able to see progress, not talk of all women, but we can see significant progress to say that. So that next year when we're celebrating and maybe having a conversation, instead of talking about the gaps, we are saying, wow, this is what has happened. Women are now in parliament, they're now 50-50. In climate crisis, we are able to solve this. Access to justice, there are no issues of corruption. Women are able to get 100% of their cases concluded, or they're able to get the justice that they want. What good practice exists, and how can we ensure that next year we are here celebrating 100%? Right now we're celebrating at maybe 50. So next year 80.
I'd like Elizabeth to start.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to share some of the practices that we have seen as a civil society, but some practices that we usually do share in terms of recommendations in different sectors that we have kept on talking about. So here I like to talk about health, education, as some of the cores, housing, access to water, as some of the cores to enable women participate in the economy. If you're talking about economic empowerment in the economy fully, the way you have noted, Brenda. And I think one of the ways that one of the best practices that I think I could share right now is equitable financing, right? We go through this rigorous process of finding the budget, developing budgets, of going over parliamentarians, presenting these budgets and how they should go about in parliament. Where should we cut? Where should we add? Where do we borrow to fill a gap that we do have? All those conversations, all those sessions that usually cost money. But I think one of the things that we feel as civil society, but also as women that belong to different communities that are served under this government, is that there's a semblance of lack of equitable financing. And what do we mean? I know that many times we use the word equality for equity, right? But maybe just to draw a difference, equality is where both women and the men are treated the same. I like to add equity because equity recognizes where someone is coming from. And if you're talking about women's positioning with men in, for example, the economy, right? We are talking about a recognition of some historic disadvantages that may have made women in different communities, depending on where she comes from, depending on how many children she has, depending on what partner she has, depending on what district she comes from, depending on what status she has, her health status. You find that there are these historic issues, the historic factors that present certain women from disadvantaged positions. So when we talk about equitable financing, we mean that a budget, for example, that recognizes the uniqueness of some of the challenges that women face in communities. I've not heard of, for example, if you're talking about health, maternal health, it's solely usually an issue that we speak about when we're talking about young girls and then women, right? If we're talking about investing in, let me say, HIV/AIDS, something that Uganda has done very tremendously. If you look at our reports on how well we are doing in terms of response, in terms of campaigns around HIV, in terms of preventive measures, that are we able to recognize that in certain communities, women are more disadvantaged. So are at risk of, for example, catching HIV, either because of the high numbers of defilement. Even when we saw the numbers going down from the last crimes report to this number by, I think, 1.5 or thereabout, still the numbers are shocking, right? That more girls still suffer, for example, the offense of defilement, that more women get raped, more women suffer sexual harassment, be it in the place of work, be it in communities, be it in public transport. So that recognition that we need to provide that extra, I don't like that unique layer, because when you say extra, it means you're taking away from one group unfairly to the other. But that's not usually the case. And I know that we do have the concept of gender budgeting that I know that sisters from Fawode are spearheaded and then have been influencing with the government through Ministry of Gender and Ministry of Finance. And there are several laws, by the way, that speak to why these are important. The Equal Opportunities Commission also present to ensure that you do not get the certificate if you do not have a budget that speaks to the uniqueness of the issues that women face. So for us, we see that this has worked, that if we are planning for a project in Gulu and we are planning for a project in Wakiso, that there are certain things that will show up in this budget that will not show up here because of the unique history of the northern region. That if we are talking about women and addressing sexual harassment in the place of work, that as we budget and plan for women, say, that work in the market, that women that work in factories, in plantations, in flower farms, we may not plan the same for them for women that work in Stanbic Bank, in MTN, that recognition. So for me, I think that's one of the lessons that's important for us to take forward in terms of addressing gender injustice in communities. Another good practice that we have seen at FIDA is meaningful participation and consultation of communities. Nobody knows their problems better than the people that are suffering the problems. That if it is the law, for example, I remember with Ministry of Justice and other other players in the civil society space, when we're advancing the law and pushing for the transitional justice law, we've kept on saying, consult the people. Let's know if it's the impact of the sexual violence that was suffered by these women. Let's hear from them. Let's speak to them so that we are planning to address the real problems that people are facing. So I think also meaningful participation in not just consultations, but also in terms of implementation. And here, allow me reference the parish development model, which is now I don't want to call it flagship, but one of the really great projects that we have seen. If you sit down to read the document that conceptualizes what parish development model is, to the end where it's supposed to begin from and, you know, go up, what it's supporting and the theory of change of this model, perfect. Now the problems coming with every month seeing a headline, a CDO here arrested, a cow here arrested because they were trying to fix a group that was not included. So meaningful participation also goes into how are people participating, for example, in government programs, right? When government says that there are youth centers in different, for example, districts where youth are able to perhaps convene, to speak to each other, to speak to service providers, are they getting utilized? Is there a meaningful participation of citizens in government programming in terms of the conceptualization, the implementation? When we say that this is a good practice at court to have witnesses there to support victims or, you know, in some of their cases, are there people actually meaningfully participating in this process and not getting relegated to the sidelines for different reasons? If we're talking about meaningful participation in education, are we making sure that the retention rate goes a little higher than what you read out a few weeks ago in terms of the numbers that drop down from primary 7 to senior 1? So meaningful participation of citizens and the government, I think, is extremely important. And then accountability, which for us, we believe it's one of the most difficult tenets, by the way, in terms of to practice, because it means different things in different communities, right? For some people, what accountability means is that if there is a document that is pardoning under the prerogative of mercy, that please give us a report to show why do we have 9 or 10 persons that are being pardoned for defilement cases when we have so many numbers of defilement cases. For some people, they'll say, you know, let's have a report. Well, for someone that maybe may be in security, someone that may understand these things a little more deeply will tell you this may not work because of these reasons. So accountability, while it may mean different things to everybody, at the center should be that whoever you're in a contract with, and here let me use the social contract between the government and its citizens, that we are both able to hold each other accountable. And here I mean that if it is community that you're able to hold, you're not hiding the persons who cut girls in Tapat and Amudat when they're practicing FGM, that you're playing your role in the community as a, you know, to fight back on some of these things that hold back girls and women on enjoying fully and participating in the economy, in the running of the economy fully. And if we come to this other end of the government, that so the government, there's clarity on what's happening, that citizens are able to feel that if I suffered an influence of the law, that I'm able to go to place A and get a solution. We have seen what happens when justice systems are not trusted. People will go to killing the suspects, people go on taking pictures and videos of the different suspects of the cases, you know, mob justice. And you never know, you know, these court systems have systems that work, that are supposed to help communities respond to these problems. So, but when the systems of the government are not being trusted by citizens, citizens end up doing whatever they believe will work for them. So another good practice is accountability from both persons. And I think this comes from rights knowledge, understanding what your right is, what your responsibility is under the law for both the persons that are in this social contract. And then lastly is the holistic nature of doing things. Here, let me speak in line with what I think Lucy's line of work is, and also which is a bigger part of the work that we do at FIDA. Like I mentioned, we are, I think, the first legal aid service providers in this country. And because we do not have a law right now on provision of legal aid, I do believe that we do play a key role in linking communities with the systems that Lucy is making sure are in place to help communities address violations that they get maybe from their fellow community members, or from really depending on whatever influence of the law that someone is, or offense that someone has committed. So in terms of holistic access to justice, for example, if I use that as an example, it would mean that someone is able to trust the system from when they get arrested, to when they go to court, to when I go to prison, to when I'm applying to get back my bail money when the case has been concluded, through the whole system, that it's holistic, that someone does not stop on the way, because then that's not fully healing. For example, if you're talking about victims of sexual violence, are we able to say, so we have police where you can go and get your police form 3 to do the work, that you're able to go to court and participate in the process properly, fully, without being threatened, without fearing that the judge might have taken money from those people. That's why I'm being treated like this. That you're able to trust that the system will give you the solution that you seek for, but also that you have the support through lawyers, paralegals, mediators at court, and etc. that are able to advance. So those are the ones I can share.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. We're going for a break. We're going for a break right now, and then maybe Lucy will take on, because in aspects of access to justice that is significant. But I also like to thank Fidelis for organizing this panel discussion and joining the rest of the world for gender equality through having this discussion, so that you're able to ensure that we're investing in women. But recognize our colleagues on Twitter. There's Sheba, Fancy, Stay Humble, all of you who are attending on X. We really appreciate you, and we're looking forward to your comments.
Smart 24, driving business.
Luxury redefined at Seasand Hotel as you indulge in the splendor of elegant living fit for the royalty that you are. Step into comfort, pampering and blissful customer-centric service as you select from our range of comfy exquisite living quarters furnished to meet with your royal preference. Surrounded by scenic beauty, our tropical setting allows you to escape the glamorous ordeal of city life. Our ambient green gardens will guide you to a place of revitalizing rest. The 3-star restaurant caters to your palate, serving your choice menu ranging from exotic cuisines to local delicacies. Our chefs will serve you full course meals for a truly out-of-this-world culinary experience. Our fully stocked bar to whet your throat, from renowned global brand whisks, brandies, gins, beers and wines to our locally celebrated beverages, you will not lack for any brew age. It's an all-new experience in the East at Seasand Hotel. So visit today at plot 15 to 19 Spire Road, Ginger, or contact us on +256 751 719 960 and +256 785 354 614 for reservations. Seasand Hotels, luxury redefined.
Cooking oil like no other makes your meal so sweet and scrumptious. The taste of Uganda, yeah, the taste of Uganda, the taste of Uganda, yeah,
can I borrow fuero? Biggie money, can I borrow renty? Manager, give me some caloni. Okay, what about 5K?
When you need a loan, you've got MTN Momo. Wesotinge. Use the Momo app or dial *165*5# for all quick loans. Choose from the different loan options from our partners and get one that works for you. Together, we're unstoppable.
These holidays, you don't need to go far to find the best entertainment.
Have I got a surprise for you?
All you need to do is stay connected to DSTV.
I'm so excited.
Pick your moment of fun and share it with your family.
Oh, that's gorgeous, yeah.
Overpowering.
Past the keeper, Jude Bellingham.
Pick the best stories and share them with your friends.
Max Verstappen wins.
Pick your moment to shine with the world's hottest stars.
Juventus get their goal.
Because it's your moment to hang out with the characters you love.
That's exactly what I do.
Whether you're at home or on the move, make it a holiday to remember.
This is the final round. Ain't gonna stop me now.
Because these holidays, it's your moment to enjoy the best entertainment. So get and stay connected to DSTV to enjoy every moment.
Whoa.
The European Investment Bank and Centenary Rural Development Bank Limited have announced the agreement to make over 426 billion shillings available to private sector enterprises with a focus on female borrowers and micro enterprises in rural areas. A statement from the European Investment Bank says that the investment represented the European Union and Uganda have to grow by 5.1% this year, with Kenya, Rwanda and Tanzania leading the region's economic momentum. A report by the audit, tax and consulting firm ETD, dubbed the East African Economic Outlook 2024 and presented during the East African Community Roundtable in Nairobi, reveals that the region will continue to lead Africa's growth pace, expanding by 5.7% in 2025.
Smart 24, driving business.
Back to the session. I hope the first session was very interesting for you and also was able to teach you a lot. And I think following back, we had just broken up and we were talking about what best practices are there from Elizabeth's perspective. So that next year when we come here, we're celebrating. We moved from, let's say, a scale of 1 to 10. We are right now, let's say we're at 7. How can we ensure that we're at 10 next year when we're here celebrating? And again, thank you to Fidelis Leadership Institute for steering this conversation and joining your voice to advance gender equality and ensure that the government continues to invest in women and ensure progress. So, Miss Lucy, picking up from what Elizabeth said, from your angle, from Ministry of Justice, we always see, and we know many women in Uganda, women and girls continue to face significant challenges. There's a lot of unequal access to justice, especially for women in rural areas. But as Elizabeth said, we are looking at the parish development model to really bring down, demystify all these things and continue to bring them closer to society, to actual grassroots communities, which is already in progress. But even with this parish development model, we see more and more and more justice relatable and closer to communities. In your view, what are the good points? What strategy should we go forward so that next year we're here celebrating?
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. For us as government and as the Ministry of Justice, one of the things that has really worked and which was at the conceptualization of the justice sector is what we call the 3 C's. We believe that justice is a chain and that the system is only as strong as the weakest link. And so what was coined when the sector started in 1999 was a chain-linked approach to justice service delivery. And the chain-linked approach was hinged on 3 key principles, as I said, what we call the 3 C's: coordination, collaboration, and communication. And what is now being spoken of is what we call the whole of government approach. And really it's about the 3 C's. How do we as government ensure that our interventions speak to each other, speak for each other, but ultimately produce results. For example, taking gender-based violence is not a one institutional thing. It's about the community structures, it's about patriarchy, it's about the norms, but it is also about the power differences. Now, how do we work together with the Ministry of Local Government? How do we work with the non-state actors? How do we then as government ensure that, since we know that justice means different things for different people, how are we able to touch on those different aspects to ensure that there's holistic service delivery? And so we have the coordination structures. You may have heard of what we call the DCCs, the District Chain Linked Committees. I know FIDA sits on the committee, civil society sits on the committee. We believe that we need to craft local solutions to local problems. The challenges that may be pertaining, for example, in northern Uganda, may not be the same for Buganda. I'll give you an example. As this violence against women study was done by UBOS in 2021, the national average for violence against women, intimate partner violence, is 36. For northern Uganda, it is 78. Now, in Busoga, it's 22. Do we do the same programming that we have in Busoga to do the same for northern Uganda, for Acholi region, which had conflict at the back of this, where the suicide rates are high, domestic violence is high? So those are the areas where, yes, we contextualize programming, but that comes from the DCCs, from the subnational structure programming that we have in place. We've run this for over 20 years. We picked up on the good practice, and we believe, and we've seen that it works. The other related issue is that of collaboration with the civil society organization. Increasingly, despite all the challenges, we do work with civil society because there are things that government may not be able to do. And in this instance, I want to highlight research. That civil society does research probably better than government. They have their niche, which may be lost on us as government because we have all these other different varied mandates. I'll give you an example of LastNet. When there's ongoing work, Belinda mentioned that, we don't have a legal aid policy yet. But one of the areas that civil society came in was they did a study. What is the cost of legal aid service provision? What is the value of legal aid service, provision? And so that research by LastNet ultimately fed into the proposals that we are making as a justice sector to the parliament for why we need a legal aid policy. So I just want to touch on those two. Those are the ones that really stand out for me. The 3 C's, the whole of government approach, and the civil society collaboration that we have that gives us the research that provides these other services, the psychosocial support for women, the awareness creation, but also just being able to handle what is in the grassroots and give us the information at this level that then informs our programming. Civil society has also been able to hold us accountable in terms of being part of the working groups that we have as a sector, but also calling us out on the things that we are not able to do that then ultimately improves our programming.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And I hope you've understood. And if you're watching from areas where you can reach smart TV, and also if you're an X, I hope you've listened to Lucy and are able to maximize all these avenues that you can use in case you suffer any form of domestic violence. Make sure you go to the nearest police station, go follow your case all through, go to the district committees because they're there to serve you. And talking of which, the police, we have been joined by Detective Senior Superintendent, who is the head of the Sexual and Child-Related Offences Department in the Criminal Investigations Directorate, Assume Rose. We'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
We've been talking about, Lucy, Elizabeth have been talking about issues of gender equality, the challenges that we face, the access to justice challenges that we face, and conversations came up in regards to how important the police is. Of course, you are the first entry point for us, different victims or perpetrators, different victims or survivors of different forms of violence to report to in communities. You have the police stations are close to communities. And you also acknowledged your recent your recent annual crime report that really shed light on the different forms of violence that women and girls suffer. And the report did highlight that much as maybe the cases have come down, but women and girls continue to suffer the biggest consequences and are continuing to be the biggest victims of violence. So in your view, and of course some issues came up in terms of many people amidst the awareness creation that you go to the police, there's still that aspect of when you go to the police you need to pay money. Maybe there's corruption, or maybe those things people say. What do you say to this? What are those hindrances that you think victims or women and girls who need to go to the police are not only women not all women with disabilities, refugee women, migrant women, all women, indigenous women, how can they access the police to report their cases? But also what best practices exist that these women and girls who are listening in can be able to rely on and have confidence in the police system.
Thank you very much, the moderator, and thank you, the viewers. Good evening, everyone. Like introduced, I'm Asimwe Rose, and I head the Department of Sexual, Gender and Children-Related Offences in the Criminal Investigations Directorate, which is under the Uganda Police Force. And as a directorate and as a department, we have a full department, like I've said, that investigates the gender-based related offenses. And among these, we also investigate the domestic violence. The domestic violence is still high, we must say. Yes, it can reduce, but we are still facing it in our communities. And it is faced by both men and women. But the women and girls, the numbers are higher than the men. And as police, as we receive them, we investigate them all, whether from down at the grassroots or even in urban and rural areas, we offer the same services. We try to reach to the grassroots, even ever, so that they can all access. As you see, all our stations are spread out. So as we have the Department of Gender and Sexual that investigates, we have rolled out desks at every police station that investigate these cases that are related to gender and children related. So at every police station, we have put those desks to ensure that these cases, people do not have to move to the main station, but whichever station they can reach onto, they can get all these services. And we also alive to the fact that some are sensitive to the people who handle them, so we make sure that the deployment under those departments and desks is balanced. So we have both female and male officers, so that women can be comfortable sharing their stories or their concerns with the female officers. But also, of course, like I said, also men are catered for, but we also consider that. And then immediately these cases, people come into our stations. They are open to everyone. And we encourage all of them to come. So immediately when these cases are reported, we interview them and we ensure that we talk to them in private. Like you see, our stations are open, but whenever our victims come in and you inform us this is your concern, we ensure that we secure a safer place so that you can interact with us in privacy to ensure that confidentiality, because no one is comfortable speaking out of such domestic violence in public. So we ensure that, and we have encouraged at all police stations to ensure that that is put in practice. In most of our stations, we have even interview rooms specifically for that. At CID headquarters, we have an interview room, but also in most of the stations, although we are trying to roll it out, but in most of the stations, we ensure that our people, when they are faced with the violence, they are talked to in privacy. And then also we have a shelter at CID headquarters and a few in some of the regions. So these shelters are helping us because sometimes you find our people face this domestic violence or and they have nowhere to run to immediately. So we realized Sometimes we would have to keep them at stations, which is not really comfortable. So we have a shelter where we're receiving those victims to ensure they are comfortable. We can talk to them. Their welfare is catered for until they are better. Sometimes we reunite them when they're in better position to their families, or sometimes we transition them to other stakeholders who can even offer better, also more services in line with their welfare, counseling, and psychosocial support, depending on the needs of those victims. And this, we are doing it, of course, with other stakeholders. Like I've said, we have to look at the multi-sectoral. So there are some NGOs that also work hand in hand with us so that we can always take them so that they can also offer that support to ensure that they are in better position. We also, in our line of work, we realize that some of these crimes, they are not open crimes. That someone will tell you, I'm going to violate my wife, so that witnesses are there. So they are done most of the times in privacy. So we look now much more into the scientific evidence to ensure that we prove these cases. Looking at most of them, we have limited witnesses. And scientific evidence has done us good, and we are progressing well. And as I speak, we have a forensic laboratory that is actually well equipped, and we usually put in our samples and everything to ensure that we do the scientific analysis so that it can help us in court, and we don't have to run around for so many witnesses, and who are not even there, because most of this violation is done in privacy. Then the concerns, of course, it also brings us to the concerns of, many people would raise, are there concerns of corruption because of examination? Sometimes we need examination for these victims who faced it, whether physical or sexual. Sometimes they need, or even psychological, they need some counseling and psychosocial support. So we have also a directorate of medical in the Uganda Police Force. We have many of them at our police stations, medical facilities. They are within our stations. They are trying to roll them out, though they haven't covered all the districts, but in most regions and stations, we have them. And their main services are free. Most of even the services are open to the public, because they are health centers. So we have health center 2s, health center 4s, but within our premises, and to ensure that our victims or survivors get the medical attention, the examination when it comes to PF3s, the 24s for the victims, but also for the first aid. Because we do not only look at ensuring that our victims, we examine the PF3s to get evidence, but we are mindful of their health. So whenever we get them, if they are victims, we usually take them so that they can access in case of PEP, to ensure they are healthy, in case of contraceptives, if it is rape or something, to ensure that they are also catered for. And most of these services are spread across, although not yet covering all of the stations. And where we do not have the police medical, we make use of the government facilities, hospitals, the health centers, which are also in our reach, and they also are helping us, and it is improving in the service delivery, especially when it comes to ensuring that our victims get justice. We have put a lot of effort on capacity building to ensure that our detectives and officers are up to the task. These are not the normal cases. People must be skilled to ensure that as they are handling these victims, they handle them in a professional way, in a more sensitive way, to get information and sit with someone who has gone through that violence, and you get out the best out of him, but also put the person in a better position. They must be well skilled. So we have done a lot of skilling, and with most of our supporters, we are not doing it alone. Police is doing it. We have actually put it also in our curriculum so that every police officer who joins and is doing training, at least they should have some training on SGBV and gender-based violence. So it's part of it. But also with our different stakeholders. Most of these NGOs, they have also been very supportive in supporting us, like the UNFPA, UN Women, and many others. I may not list all, but they've really come in handy, and they've supported to ensure that the police officers are up to the task, to ensure that. Then also, of course, creating awareness. Police officers, most times we get out on radios and TVs, like here we are, to ensure that masses are sensitized. Some are still ignorant, some are not alive to the laws, Some feel we should still be in the other. They assume a woman should be in this position, not a man. So they need that awareness. And as police, we are also looking into that line. And we have always been out there to sensitize in schools, the communities, on radio stations and TVs to ensure that also the public comes up. We cannot fight the domestic violence if we don't involve the communities. They must come up and join us and all of us as stakeholders to ensure that but also the coordination and communication with different stakeholders, the judiciary, ODPP, prisons. We usually have joint meetings. And others, the probation officers and the rest, and Ministry of Health, mentioned. So we usually have those meetings, and they've helped us to better on the justice system, try to expedite on the investigation so that we do not take long, the back and forth, the prosecution guided investigations. So we don't have to investigate until the end, then that's when the prosecutor gets to know, oh, you're investigating this. So we keep in that close communication and touch to ensure that we get out the best cases and we expedite them so that we do not having those delays. And of course, all that said, we still have, like you said, the communities. There are still challenges with the communities. I know with our police officers, like you said, that some still complain of the corruption. We have always tried to check it. I know people keep raising it, but we have put systems in place. We encourage people that if you go to a station and maybe someone is asking for a bribe, raise it to the attention of the officers. We have the professional standards unit, and it's there mainly to check the professionalism of the police officers. All police services are free at the stations. If you have to pay for a service, it is clear, and you have maybe to pay its government revenue, receipted. But this one of give me this and I enter your case, we do not need any money at any police station to have your case registered. So you can be able to walk into every station and register a case. And in case someone demands for any single money to have your case registered, you can raise it to the professional standards unit. We can raise it to, we have a toll-free line, which I'll share it at a later time, which you can also raise your concern so that we can address it. And also, we are opening up soon a call center at Chibuli, where people, it will be open to the public, toll-free lines, where across the whole country or across the whole globe, you can raise your complaints, concerns, feedback, and the rest, so that we can better our services. So all services are for free. And I encourage the public to desist from giving money for any service at the police station. We all deserve free services, and we are ready to offer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very comprehensive, and I must say that I must pay tribute and salute to your officers, because each time I travel to Amudat all the way in Karamoja or go to Kwen, very deeply in remote areas, I always find a police station, and the dedication at which many of them do work and try to serve the community, I must say, is very admirable, and I must thank you for your service. So, yeah. But I'm hearing all of you. You're talking about, like, now the forensic, collecting evidence, going to medical facilities, PrEP, all those. Lucy, you're also talking about access to justice, the gender equality, but we know these services are expensive. They're really expensive. To invest in gender equality is quite expensive. To invest in PrEP kits is expensive. To ensure that access to justice fully works needs to be financed. So I feel like we are all talking about, it's great we have those activities, but how is the financing? Do we have the financing? And if not, how can we get this financing right to ensure that all the different actions that we have mentioned about, that could really make access to justice, that could make police work more effectively, that could make the programs of civil society that are implementing communities work better? How can we get financing right for these actions and measures to ensure that that women and girls in communities get the services that specifically meet their needs. Maybe I'll start with Elizabeth.
Okay, yeah. I'll begin with that. Something that I mentioned before that I think also falls right here in terms of some of the good practices that I see. One of the things that we must applaud Uganda for having in place is the gender budgeting initiative that I spoke about earlier, that I think helps put many things in perspective or check a few things here and there. On whether that certificate, on how that certificate is got, we can look at that later. But the fact that we do have processes around that need for us to take into consideration the unique characteristics of groups we are planning for, characteristics of different communities, of different districts, like Lucy spoke about earlier, is I think something that we can brag about. We can improve in terms of making it work better, but I think that initiative is one of the ways we can ensure that we are investing properly and that whatever investment we are making is value for money, right, for the government. Another thing that I think that would be important to ensure that investment is done properly is to have clear, accessible accountability mechanisms, right, where the government is able to, for example, sanction, right, officers, if you're talking about police, those that are acting with impunity towards, for example, violations of rights of different groups, and for the context of this conversation, rights of women and girls. If you're talking about sexual violence, I keep making reference to sexual violence because it's, I think, one of the biggest violations that women and girls continue to suffer in this country. So the importance, and you will forgive me that I keep going back to accountability, because one of the things that we have set right in this country is to have policy that is responsive, right? Even when the journeys, the process of reviewing, for example, policies is long, like any other country really. We must applaud Uganda. If it is a strategy on ending teenage pregnancies and child marriages, we do have. If it is a guideline on implementation of a particular act, it is there. If it is improving initiatives around economic empowerment, how we budget, that is there, right? We do have these different policies. But if we are not holding each other accountable, if we don't have a round table, if I could call it, where we are able to say, is police playing their role? Is the judicial officers also playing their role that they're supposed to play? If you're talking about prosecutors and the role that they play in the whole queue of access to justice, are they playing their roles? If we're talking about the police and whoever is supposed to play a role in ensuring, for example, that a file is sanctioned, are we following the right procedures? Are we doing the work in a manner that doesn't put, for example, victims in more than harm or exposing them to more harm? So I think for me, in terms of also the second point, in terms of ensuring that investment is made in the right spaces in a manner that is equitable, I think it is important that there are accountability mechanisms, that there are consequences when things do not happen the way they should happen. Or there are consequences. Going away from a place where communities are not shocked that a 5-year-old has been defiled, for example. Moving away from a place where they will say a particular officer has eaten PDM money for 5 circles in a district, that there are sanctions for such actions to send a message, if anything, to deter anyone else that might be interested in behaving in a manner that takes away. Because like you say, these services are really expensive. Yet, in FIDA, I could give an example of ways that we have invested in women's groups. If we have to take an example of investment in women's groups or different organizing, VSLAs, any self-help groups, mothers' unions, we have several. Depending on where you come from, you might have a different name for it. FIDA did receive small money sometime that they did invest in women in Karamoja region. Where, for example, if it was a woman selling charcoal, that they were giving 200,000 Uganda shillings. You see, it looks small money, shopping money for many of you that may be watching this show, pocket change. But for a woman in Napak to receive 200,000 with a book and a session to say, so for 6 months you're going to use this money. Every day you'll be recording how much you sell, how much you're taking to the bank, to the group. Many of them are taking to the group to save, how much you're using for home, how much you're using this. And it's amazing to see how invested these women are. To say, at the end of the day, Peter gave me 200,000, how am I investing it? If I'm not paying back, we've seen VSLAs that force other VSLAs to pay back money because that money, or the village savings and loans associations or self-help groups, many of you may be calling them mothers unions. If you have maybe history of the church, if it has a history of the church, many of you have circles where you say either it's a work circle, it's a group of women that come together living in the same proximity in communities to save up and be able to save themselves a little later with some of the life emergencies. So I would say that if there are no means of holding ourselves accountable, we are wasting time. And that's the only way we are able to follow government money to say that we bought so many kits, rep test kits in that hospital. That, there are forms that are filled. Where are these people that were treated? So that we eliminate instances where, for example, a doctor will sell some and then give some to those that he or she believes are very vulnerable and may need help. So for me, those are the two that I think should be prioritized in terms of ensuring that the government is investing in the right people and is investing in the places where we need that investment most.
Yeah, thank you. For me, I'll pick on from what Elizabeth has said, and I'd like to position it from the angle of we need to follow the money. To be able to follow the money. I mean, we have the Public Finance and Management Act of 2015 that calls for gender equity budgeting, and the fact that all of us as government institutions, our budgets will not be passed by the Parliament until we are cleared by the Equal Opportunities Commission. The issue is, how does that money that has been budgeted for gets to implement the activity that it was budgeted for? Because it's one thing to have it on paper and get cleared by the Parliament. How then do we ensure that those monies actually did what they were supposed to have done? And that then brings it in for me that as a sector we have these structures in place, and every 6 months and 1 year we give accountability for the monies that we have expended. But also, how do we ensure that the Ministry of Finance ensures that at every quarter they actually allocate the money that was approved for the institutions to get? And why do I say this? Because several times we have had that quarter 4 we have not had any releases of money. How then are we able to ensure that the commitments we made and the reasons why Equal Opportunities Commission cleared our budget, we have actually implemented them? So for me, it's important that we are able to not only budget right, but also that we are able to follow the money. And it ties into what Elizabeth is saying about accountability. Because at the end of the day, the actions and the measures to address gender inequality and to have meaningful participation of the women require a lot of financing. I think we are all agreed that it is a lot of money that is required. But if we don't get that financing right and we don't have the accountability mechanisms in place, then that financing is just in words. We need to follow the money and ensure that, it is what the money has been budgeted to do is actually what it does.
Thank you very much. When we look at the financing, I would say mostly we depend on government funding and also some of the stakeholders that support. But if I'm to push it back to some of the causes of this domestic violence, we look at the contributing factor as poverty. And to me, I usually think that if we could look at empowering these women and girls, then it can give us a good picture or view on how we look at also financing, looking at the aftermath. Because if it is poverty mostly that is also giving a rise to this violence, and now we address that by empowering our women and girls, ensure that at least they have something to do, they can earn some living, they are empowered, and they are out of that vulnerability, then it reduces also on the impact of the crime. Then the crime goes down, meaning also it reduces on the impact of the financing. How much do we need? So I think we can look at that also in two ways. That also as we look at the financing, yes, the financing is not yet enough. We still need much more to ensure that our people get justice. Like you said, running these kits, forensics laboratories, investigating these cases. If you're to look at just investigating one case, how much it costs. Leave alone walking into a station and just entering, but looking at the transport, the analysis of this evidence, the cyber analysis of our phones and technology and what, then the medical. They are free, but of course government invests in them. So if crime can reduce and we, like my sister said, that we empower these women and they are empowered, then it can also help us to reduce the impact, and the budget at least can be more friendly. That those few cases, I know we may not say it is out, we no longer have completely zero. But if the percentage reduces and drops, then also it reduces on the impact of the budgeting we look at. So I think as we look at this, we also need to look at the preventive measures, that we address both as we look at the financing, but also how best can we look at the long term, the sustainability, empowering our women to ensure that they are out of that vulnerability that positions them to face that violence.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I totally agree with all of you. Empowerment is very key, because also when you empower women, they're able to demand accountability from the government, but also all other key stakeholders. And then totally agree also with accountability and follow the money. Because when you follow the money, as you totally over 100% explained, you're able to see the money allocated being eventually being used for what it was budgeted for. And I think Ministry of Finance, I hope someone from the ministry is listening. Ministry of Justice, the police, Ministry of Gender cannot work without you. I hope as you're budgeting money for all the activities that promote gender equality, I know Uganda's Vision 2040 is very express and clear on the need for gender equality and women's economic empowerment. I hope as you're budgeting, you're able to fully integrate all the need that women need into those budgets, so that when we're following the money, we're able to really implement and support women to get out of this aspects of abuse, but also able to empower them, but also able to get the money spent, allocated first, but also spent in a way that is supposed to be used effectively to address gender equality. And Rose, you did speak about, sorry, I'm not using the title, but you did speak about cyber crimes with technology. You mentioned something. I think that's what brings me to my next question. We're seeing there's an evolution. Digital technologies. There are new crimes coming up. There's cyber, of course, right now we have the cyber violence that's ongoing. Women get abused. Women's nudes are leaked, mostly women. Their nudes are leaked online. And then you get to find that phones have been another new mode of sexual violence or different forms of abuse that women. Trafficking also now happens in the phone. So you find that there are nuanced crimes that are rising because of the exposure to digital technology. And then there's also of course, the aspects of climate change. You know that climate change crisis impacts women most, but also increases their risk to different forms of violence, but also has a huge significance to their loss of livelihoods, food security, so water scarcity, which also is also linked to aspects of child marriage, teenage pregnancies. So you find that digital crimes that are coming up, and also the climate crisis is creating a cycle of violence for women, which of course impacts on gender equality and also perpetuates the discriminatory norms that continue to discriminate against women and keep us women and girls left behind. So I know there are new fields, but has the police, has the Ministry of Justice, and civil society been able to look at these themes? And if yes, what are you doing to get on speed addressing those increasing access to justice that arise from the violation in cybercrime or climate-related gender-based violence? Or how are you empowering women as arising from the climate crisis? Rose.
Okay, thank you very much. When we look at the cyber or online crimes, they are on the increase. And trafficking alone is so high because most of these connections are done online. And because of what people portray on media, people tend to be, I think, falling for deception that probably in other places, things are better than where they are. And the crime is on the increase. People access phones online and the rest, and because they fall in for that, they have ended up into wrong hands. We have seen many who have moved to these other countries, and most of the reports that come back are not good. We have very many cases that we are investigating. It's good that we have the act in place, the Anti-Trafficking Act, which is helping us, but still, and coupled with the sensitizations that we are doing and the trainings, of course, in that line for us as police, we have already equipped our officers, we have run several trainings, we have the department also, the trafficking, my department also handles those same crimes. We investigate them, but still they are on the increase because people get this information online and they just move without even any connection. Some of them don't even go through the registered and licensed organizations. They just connect with their people, whoever they get online, and they just move. And whatever they face there, we usually see these crimes. People who have lost their organs, people who are really into dangerous positions, they are tortured, they are subjected to whichever sexual exploitation, labor, and all that. So it is also on the increase, and also the cyber harassment. We have seen people spread out everything from their wives. Maybe love has gone sour, and he pushes out everything awash on social media. Of course, we have always penalized them. We do investigate those cases as the directorate. We have the cyber department that helps also in handling those cases, but those ones cut across also to my department. So we handle hand in hand with the cyber team in investigating those online cases. We have the Anti-Pornography Act, which also helps us, that we usually also charge them on. So we are trying to ensure that we have the culprits brought to book, but still we need a lot of sensitization. It's the adults probably that know, but these phones are in hands of our children, the youth, the young people in holidays, even in schools. They can access all social media and all that, and they are getting spoiled. Some are just groomed online. You find they are hooked every time. And sometimes, because it is now we are in the new era of technology, we only say, I've put for my child data, he's doing some revision. Oh, the curriculum changed. We have to do research and everything. But sometimes as parents, we are not taking an extra mile to know my child every time is glued on this laptop where I put data full time. My child every time is crying for this phone. You find even a 4 or 5 year old can download anything on the phone. Yes, it's good, but I think we need to check our people, especially the young children and these teenagers. Most of them are getting recruited, they are put into those crimes, the online sexual exploitation, those recruiting them into pornography just because online. But because we have not, as parents and as teachers, take an extra mile to ensure that we monitor. As much as we need these gadgets for our education, and it is the IT era, but we need to check our people, ensure the content they can access. If you can at least put restrictions so that you know my child, yes, is doing ABCD, but there are areas that are a no-go. But sometimes we've left it. My children are .com, but it is ruining most of our children because we've received several who have been groomed into that line, and they are really, So I think we need to take it up and sensitize masses, and as parents to do their roles, and guardians to ensure that we make good use of technology, but also to make good use to empower, because we still must make use of it to be up to date and also empower the women. Thank you.
Elizabeth, Lucy?
Yes, I'll go next, and I'll answer in twofold. Really, just first recognizing the positives really of what technology has been able to do for women in terms of empowerment. I remember during COVID-19, we have over 60 women's groups that we've dealt with in one of our districts of Luweero. And I remember during lockdown, in bid to encourage them to continue saving that weekly small money that they save, they utilized mobile money. And while mobile money may look like not a new innovation for you here, but it used to make sense for the women to physically go and meet, right, to save their money. And for the first few weeks, even when it did not come to us naturally, they kept on now using that money for other things, and they did not save for a while. Until when we were thinking, no, you do not have to meet physically to be able to save. So if you have that money, send your 2,000 to your chairperson. So we see that women are able, we are addressing some of the gaps in small and big ways of addressing the gaps in terms of financial literacy, in terms of financial inclusion using technology. I cannot understand what we are doing in terms of education right now, using televisions, using online, like she has spoken about, being able to work to continue to serve our communities. Our toll-free number was working, for example, through COVID-19 to respond to that woman crying on the end of the line, just wanting to talk to somebody and saying, okay, tomorrow I'll go to the police, tomorrow I'll do ABC. So just recognizing the ways in which technology has been helping enhance the status of women in communities. Of course, I cannot forget courts. I saw lawyers in FIDA using the online, the Zoom to be able to represent clients. And we continue to see that system being used by the judiciary to work on our backlog of cases. But like she has mentioned, that we continue to see certain gaps in terms of, as digitalization continues, I think also protection is supposed to be strengthened. And how do I mean? As we have more women online, as we have more children getting into the online space, then we should also be able to tighten as a step one in terms of our policies, right, to hold stakeholders, the online stakeholders, right, accountable for some of these things, because these things are possible. When we talk about terms of policy, also in terms of protecting women and girls that are utilizing the online space for different things, we see the Computer Misuse Act sort of coming in to bridge the gap that we did have in terms of policy, with some few weaknesses here and there that can get improved over time. The Anti-Pornography Act, which had a few of the articles actually rescinded by court, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. We can talk about also the fact that we've seen several trainings happen to different stakeholders to either update on how do you investigate. We've seen the police be in some of these trainings for CSOs. Then on the other end, I'd also like to say that we have a missed opportunity. I usually call it a missed opportunity with the Sexual Offences Bill. We still do have hope now that it's back in Parliament. Another opportunity to sort of also get into addressing issues of sexual violence, but in the online space. In terms of climate justice, in closing, we are not an institution that primarily focuses on work on climate justice, but a lot of the women and the work that they do in terms of economic empowerment has pushed us to integrate. How do we make sure that the businesses that the circles are undertaking is not then contributing to deforestation, for example, in the districts where we work? So those are some of the initiatives that I would say that we are undertaking to ensure that as we support women to participate in the economy, as we support the women to own more land, to have more usage of land for agriculture and other practices, that we do remember that they are taking care of Mother Nature. From whom we are able to exist.
Thank you. We have 8 minutes, so I'd like to touch on a very fundamental topic that I think it touches at the heart of the police, FIDA, because you started this together with the ICGLR, and Lucy, because you're the power behind this in the ministry, in terms of the specialized courts. We know that Uganda submitted its combined 8th and 9th CEDAW periodic report of the CEDAW Convention on 11 February 2022. And at the end of the session, they received recommendations and concluding observations, including the need to accelerate the establishment of special divisions of the High Court to consider cases of gender-based violence against women, and to also institutionalize the good practice of High Court special sessions. What would you have to say in this regard? Lucy especially, and then of course the police, because you're part of this, but in brief because we have about 7 minutes.
And thank you, Brenda. The special sessions where we have been implementing the special sessions under the Kampala Declaration, and it is a declaration which comes under the International Conference of the Great Lakes Region Framework to address sexual and gender-based violence. It's called the Kampala Declaration because the meetings took place here in Munyonyo in 2011, and all the 12 countries of the Great Lakes region signed up to it. Now, one of the provisions that was made under Declaration 8 was calling upon governments and ministers to set up a special framework to fast track the disposal of SDBV cases. And this was through setting up special courts, special sessions, or specially trained personnel that would ensure that SDBV cases are fast-tracked. Uganda started in 2018, but as a government, but this project was actually started by FIDA in 2017, I believe, and the cases, the sessions were done in northern and northeastern Uganda in about, I think, 5 districts. But the focus of FIDA at that point in time was on restoring communal relationships, on accountability, as well as ensuring that there was restorative justice. And the JLO Secretariat was part of the task force, and we realized that this is a government issue. It is not just civil society. So we picked up on that same concept and then took it up, and together with the support of the Judiciary Justice Gardenia, we beefed up that concept and then started implementing the sessions. We set up a task force, a multi-institutional task force, because we realized that this is a multi-institutional issue. We wanted to be able to clearly craft out the agenda to ensure that the proper activities were captured and that the resources went to the right institution based on the information that the task force members were able to give us. And so we started. And in 2018, the first time we had the session, the conviction rate was 63%. It means that out of every 10 GBV cases, we had conviction in 6 of those cases. And this was really a milestone because in about 2008, the conviction rate was at less than 20%. And this was really a milestone. The next year, we went to 70%, the next year to 73%. In 2022, the conviction rate was 80%. And this, you notice the incremental way that the conviction rates were increasing. One, we were able to learn lessons over the years, but also we were able to improve from the support supervision. At every session, the leadership of the institution, the DPP would go herself, the principal judge was on the ground, we would go during the session and be able to give support supervision. And so then there was, improvement. Also, before we start every session, we do a pre-session training. And in this pre-session training, everybody is there. And we usually laugh because the principal judge sits together with the High Court judge, together with the magistrate who is implementing a session, together with the police, the IO, and the forensics officers, and we train. And then we go out into the sessions. And then after the session, we have a post-session review meeting. And here we're talking about what happened, how did it happen, how can we work better. We also trained the police specifically on how do we go about the sexual and reproductive health issues in the barracks and the neighboring communities, because you realize that even within the police force, there were issues of domestic violence. You've read in the news. And then we also strengthen scientific management of crime. Rose has been telling you about, there are no witnesses for most of the sexual and gender-based violence cases. Our strength lies in forensics. It's the silent witness. But we needed to one, address the scenes of crime officers. We trained them. And right now, we saw an increment in the quality of evidence. And I'll say about the science. out of every 10 specimens that are picked from the scene of crime, and for STBV, the scene of crime is your body, it is the bedroom, it is that room that, the offense happened. Out of every 10, 7 of them are coming out positive. And when I mean positive, it means they're picking the right specimens, storing it in the right way to enable it to be analyzed and come out with a positive result that puts that person on the scene of crime. And just quickly, we have been able to fast track cases. We have also been able to do something that we're not doing in the other cases, and that is victim impact assessment statements. For every case that we have been hearing, the probation officers, we trained and also facilitated probation officers that they go out into the community as the cases are being had or they're going to be had. They collect what was the impact of the offense, one, on that accused, the victim. What was the impact on the family? What was the impact on the community? And this report is then taken to the state attorney, and the state attorney provides it in court. Why is it important? It is important because now we are able to have better case outcomes, but also to give a sentence that is commensurate with the crimes. We are better, the judicial office, there's a joke that usually in a criminal case, the two parties know the facts, but it's the judicial officer who is on trial. And when the judicial officer then has this information, he's able to give out the right information. So we are the only country in the in the Great Lakes region that are implementing the special sessions. We have made tremendous progress. And just to also highlight on the cyber issue, I wanted to just make a statement. During the opening of the annual law year, the president, through the vice president, made in his speech, highlighted the issue of emerging crimes and called upon the justice system to address the emerging crimes. And one of those was cyber issues, cyber security. And so for us as a justice sector, it is something that, is now a presidential directive, and we are committed to ensuring, we address issues concerning cyber security.
We have 2 minutes, so maybe I guess we can conclude for that. Maybe Rose would like to leave us with a toll-free line that people can reach out to. But also importantly, thank you so much, viewers, for those who joined us on X. We are really grateful for your time, and unfortunately, we don't have time to take questions, but we do acknowledge you. We are watching you. We are seeing your participation on X, and thank you so much. But to women out there, Women's Day is a reminder that your voices matter. In case anything happens to you, you're a victim of violence, you're surviving violence, the police is here. Civil society like FIDA Ugandans, your Ministry of Justice is here and very committed to ensuring that you get the justice that you need and you get all the services that you need free of charge at the police station. And I think we shall leave the number of the toll-free for the police in case you're violated or in case you're a victim of sexual and gender-based violence. And we wish you a happy Women's Day. Thank you so much, Rose, from the head of Department of the Sexual Offences of the Sexual and Child-Related Offences Department. We thank you, Elizabeth Kengisha from FIDA Uganda. We thank you, Lucy, from the Ministry of Justice. And of course, the CEDAW Committee. We're grateful for the overall service that you do for women and girls globally and in Uganda. Thank you so much and have a good Women's Day, Fidelis. Thank you for joining your voice by bringing us together to achieve gender equality. Bye and enjoy your evening.
Smart 24, driving business.